So you might ask yourself, why should I watch this video? What is the value I'm getting out of it? What can this video tell me that I can't find in other Skyrim videos? Well, I'll tell you what. This character is a bit traditional as far as like most people that play this game, they might start out with like playing a Nord because the region's Skyrim, and that's what the canon sort of Dragonborn looks like. But it is kind of like traditional in that sense where it's just like you choose a Nord and you're going to be a warrior, but it's going to be kind of like a focus build where, yeah, I do deviate into magic and I become a battle mage, but I don't end up really selling my soul to become nocturnal slave, or I don't really do the Dark Brotherhood. I mean, there are arguments you could make as to why you might do the Dark Brotherhood as a Nord, because sure, Lorkhan is actually pretty close to Sithis in like the cosmology of the Elder Scrolls, but in this case, we're just going to try to keep it clean because I am like the Dragonborn and I am like the soul of Akatosh. So Akatosh is liable to do things that are more Anuic. So there's that duality, two sides of the coin, Akatosh and Shore or Lorkhan. But this is legendary mode. And legendary mode, of course, tends to be hard. In the early part of the game, for sure, I'm using a lot of followers, and there are other ways you can kind of cheese combat with like conjuration, but I think some of the strategies I use, aside from just using stealth or illusion or conjuration, different ways like that to get out of having to actually do any fighting, they will show you ways that you can just take enemies head on and win. The first way, of course, like I said, is companions, because the companions, your followers, are going to take the brunt of the damage for you when you cannot tank it yourself. Otherwise, you would have to like traverse the whole terrain of Skyrim, like running away from things, getting up on rocks, desperately using the terrain as much as possible, because more likely than not, you're not going to have any such sneak attacks that could just like 1-2 punch these people or one punch them. I did release recently a build that is an Orc Assassin, where you could potentially combine both the effects of the Assassin's Blade, the Dark Brotherhood Gauntlets, and the ability of theirs that doubles your attack for 60 seconds once a day, as a way to guarantee, perhaps, that you're going to be able to kill an enemy. Because I used a little conjuration and a little bit of bed magic with Astrid, I know that's going to get turned into a dirty joke, but watch the video. I literally use a bed to survive against Astrid. I get her Blade of Woe, and the Blade of Woe is equivalent in its base damage to a Dragonbone Dagger. So one-handed upgrades to your, Armsman perk that'll increase your one-handed skill. It'll apply to daggers. It'll increase your damage with daggers. This dagger, I think, does like a base of like 34 damage. You do the math, like you'll be getting a solid 15 times 2, 34 would be like 30 times 30, about around 900 damage. And all that's got to be subtracted, of course, for legendary difficulty. But with this weapon, I was able to one-shot a lot of enemies, and provided I had very good sneak and very good stealth, for most of the use cases in the game, it is quite a broken strategy. In this mode, though, I'm pretty much defaulting, as most people probably would, to using a companion, even though in certain games like Fallout New Vegas, I think companions can ruin it. Like, the difficulty, I think here it's pretty warranted. If there are any strategies you would know of that involve like mobility or some gimmick that is kind of like the checkmate moment where any enemy or group of enemies you come across you can just take down, let me know, because like I've said, pure warrior builds, and even if you try to do a mixed build early on where you take on different class types like a mage and warrior, you still have a limited tool set unless you're really min-maxing and you're going to like the College of Winterhold. You maximize your restoration by some means, purposeful damage. You maybe maximize your destruction, maybe you maximize your enchanting through tedious work, and to a surety, before you have to face too much combat and lose a lot, then of course you're going to be able to like reduce magic use by 100% for magic cost, and then cast infinite like dual thunderbolt spells and stun lock enemies. These are the things you can do, of course, with magic. Restoration, you can do a lot of healing. With healing, with the perks like respite, you can heal your stamina too and keep doing power attacks. Those are the advantages of like being a battle mage and having a lot of magic on your side. By contrast, you don't have the super powerful sneak attack multiplier with a warrior by default. Maybe perhaps you could like involve enchanting and alchemy and do the crafting loop to get a really powerful legendary level smithing upgrade for your weapon, and not even have to use enchanting directly in the process of using a weapon. There's an argument to be made from kind of like a lore standpoint. You're still using like the magical knowledge of enchanting in the process of acquiring the knowledge to get the smithing. But suffice to say, using a combination of magic and like warrior abilities is the fastest way probably for a warrior on legendary to become very powerful as a warrior in his own right, and you probably still be relying on restoration. For curiosity's sake, we could discuss what a pure warrior build might look like. A pure warrior on legendary might want to chain the heavy armor, and to do this you're going to have to get your best suit of armor. You're probably just going to have to go find like a guaranteed location for an enemy and get like a few hits in on you with your heavy armor and somehow run away. And if you really are dead set on not using magic, you would have to just run away and find that enemy again and wait to power level your heavy armor to the max level so that you have the best defensive ability. You can make an argument actually though that like your heavy armor isn't going to help you that much on such a difficulty because you're like a salmon swimming up the waterfall, and we know how the salmon get treated in Skyrim, but you are basically going against the current of things because you're already going to have so much damage done towards you. Well, newsflash, you're going to have that same problem just doing your attacks. And in some of the games like Oblivion, there are ways you could get around the damage multiplier based on the harder difficulties. And one of them was alchemy. One of them was conjuration, stuff like that. But in this game, I think that you just have to kind of like suck it up. And another way you could like power up your training sessions for heavy armor is if you find a certain enemy, you can brew a ton of potions to heal yourself and then take all that damage, run away, and then you just rinse and repeat. Potions, I guess, from an argumentative standpoint, are not really quite the same as magic, even though I guess there's like arcane properties to your potions. So it's kind of like a gray area, but I feel like if you really wanted to like obstinately play a pure warrior, Redguard, for example, orc, Nordic character, then those are some good ways to do it. Now, like I said earlier, smithing, you can have level to 100. You can take the relevant perk, and you can upgrade your weapon of choice to legendary. And maybe while you're at it, like I said, you can just use your alchemy, since it's a whole step removed from magic, because the only thing that's magic is like the properties of your potions. Like I said, I think most people would argue that like potion brewing and like alchemy isn't quite magical, because we've seen in history times when you have people who have like a medical capacity in like pre-modern times that would brew potions or make some sort of medicine that was primitive with herbs. I don't think you would say they were precisely magical people. I mean, you can say, okay, magic doesn't really exist, but insofar as we regarded people as magic users or the possibility of being considered mages in real life, I don't think that those occupations would be magical. Now, there were times, of course, when shamans and priests would use herbs, sometimes for like entheogens. It's still used with ayahuasca. That is a case where there is a religious supernatural aspect that they're trying to channel. So maybe you could say there's some sort of magical aspect, but in the context of Skyrim, I don't think that it would culturally be seen as a form of magic. Maybe it's just like a loophole to get around if you wanted to be like a hardcore non-magic user and succeed. But I do think that there's some validity to the idea, the challenge, and I've seen different series on YouTube about this, of playing a character that purely does not use magic, because like I've said, magic and stealth are rather overpowered in these games. I don't know if like perhaps it'd be better to like be a pure warrior, ambush warrior with stealth qualities to you, where you really take advantage of the damage that stealth does. But maybe for like the role in the lore play of like being like a warrior Nord, you really have to go all in on doing like a warrior style playthrough where you don't use magic at all. Because I've had like a idea in my mind where warriors and Nords that were followers of Shor, who was Lorkhan, a lot of aspects of Lorkhan tend to avoid the whole magical aspect, the arcane of things, the Arbus, and they try to use the mundane. They tend to be mundane qualities. So I tend to think that the path the Nords like to take, and similar like Sijic races, would be to do warrior type stuff and to do things in the mundane fashion. If a dark elf Telvanni might want to take a, arcane teleporter or like a hover device that they've created, and maybe the Dwemer have like kind of like a weird mix of what you might call arcane, but it might also be like a secular steampunk technology, the Nords are going to take stairs and they're going to like use the stairs with 100-pound weights attached to their legs to train their muscles harder and put a bigger burden and overcome that burden to climb that mountain, as Todd would say.